with racing, then you'll love the new betting brand for racing fans. With exclusive markets, promotions, insights and content. That's betr. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome to Racing in Sydney on Punters Inside Run. I'm joined by Mick, Sharkie, and it's a great pleasure to have Nick Hluchaniuk, or Nick H as we like to call him, from punters.com.au. Join us once again. Nick, we've got Group 1 racing again at Randwick. How did you rate the track? What are you expecting? Because last week it was a huge day there. We had a heavy, but it raced beautifully.
It did indeed, and thankfully the sun was out last Saturday, but as you mentioned, played beautifully. Look, a few showers around again, so we're probably back to a heavy range. Rail goes out 4, but hopefully again, it's a fair track.
Nick, we get to test that Caulfield Guineas form in the Spring Champion in the Group 1 versus the Gloaming form. Sydney horses have been doing pretty well in Melbourne. What do you make of Elliptical going north?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because we're obviously now trying to transfer this mile form to the 2000. So I like that Caulfield Guineas form. It's just whether a horse like Elliptical gets the 2000. Most of them have that query on them. Elliptical's breeding, it's a bit of a mismatch because you've got Done Deal, the sire, but it's out of a sprinting mare. So it's a bit of a guessing game.
So when you're doing the form for this sort of race, Nick, how far back have you gone of what's happened in the past as far as breeding and whether they handle tracks to get the 2000? Because that's the question for this race every year, isn't it? Who gets the 2000?
It is. So obviously you've got to look at the breeding there. Also got to trust your eye a little bit on what you're seeing. And in this case, I'm just going for a horse that I know likes Randwick and likes the wet track.
All right, mate, I'll just jump in there. So what have you got then for your tips for the Spring Champion?
It is Williamsburg on top, as I mentioned, just because of his love of Randwick and a wet Randwick track. Had to go to Warwick Farm, obviously, when the Gloaming got transferred. I thought the run there was pretty good. So I got him as the one to beat, but obviously that Caulfield Guineas form is probably the stronger form line. It's just who you're trusting to get the 2000.
Shark, well, you're going with the form then for the Melbourne form for your tips.
I am, yeah. I'm backing Elliptical. I'm really wary of Graham Rogerson and Sharp and Smart. He hasn't been visually impressive in his first 2 wins, but he's won them both. And this is the race he's sort of earmarked for a big improvement heading towards a derby. So Roger's a pretty canny trainer. So I think we have to pay attention to that. And Williamsburg, I'm including him next best.
I've thrown Williamsburg and Macho Latte in, but where do you see She's Extreme in the race, Nick?
Yeah, I think they will be positive here on the filly. A little bit hard to work out how she's been going. I'd say she's a little bit below what they would have hoped, but I think there was a sign there last start over the mile that perhaps the 2000 is what she's looking for. As I mentioned, I think they'll be positive, put her up on the speed, and that gives her a chance.
All right, mate, what about some other bets that we should be following at Randwick on the weekend?
Yeah, like in a race 5, number 4, Diamil, on the quick backup, and I think that's key. Positive post-race comment from James McDonald just mentioned that this horse was just lacking that little bit of fitness. So I think now up to a mile third up, Diamil is going to be very hard to beat in race 5. And a little bit of value too late in the card. Race 10, number 4, Cole Crusher. Has the blinkers going on second up. I think that will be a key to a bit of improvement.
Nothing like a tip in the last to keep you going for the day. I don't mind that at all. Nick, as always, thanks, mate. Look forward to talking to you next week. Happy punting.
Thanks, Matty. All the best on the weekend.
Nick H from punters.com.au. We'll take a break because coming up, we're going to recap all the tips for both Melbourne and Sydney on the big call.
The betting brand for sports fans. That's betr. Gamble responsibly.